What's up, guys? This is DJ Holland with the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. Sorry, there was another window with the show running. Appreciate you guys for joining me tonight. As always, I will be answering all of your Michigan recruiting questions and so much more. I'm coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas, which is the home of the All-American Bowl. I spent the early part of the afternoon watching Michigan signees Andrew Sprague and Josiah Edmond, as well as top 100 wide receiver target Gatlin Bear. It took me 7 hours to get here. I've been up since 4:30 a.m. Eastern, but right here for you guys to answer everything you have. But before we dive into the questions, I do want to shout out our sponsor for tonight's show, and that is My Perfect Franchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? Guys, I am in love with franchises. Obviously, I love Chick-fil-A. One franchise that is near and dear to me here in Texas is Whataburger, and we don't have that out on the East Coast or in the Midwest. So, get with Andy, try to bring some of these regional chains into the national picture, live out your franchise dreams with My Perfect Franchise. Visit them at myperfectfranchise.net or call Andy Luedecke at 404-973-9901. So again, shout out to myperfectfranchise.net. But yeah, like I said, I'm in San Antonio. We have a pretty loaded schedule. Today was the first practice. Tomorrow will obviously be the second practice. Friday we'll have the underclassmen combine, so it should be some good 2025 targets to talk about. Saturday's the game and obviously decision day for Bryce Underwood, and that takes us right into our first question, and that is, hi, EJ, after Michigan's Rose Bowl, how are we looking with Underwood, and what percentage do you give us to land him? So right now, the On3 recruiting prediction machine is giving Michigan a 3.6% chance of landing him. LSU is still the heavy favorite with a 91.7% chance of landing him as well. Now, I spent some time with our LSU writer, Billy Embody, who is also in San Antonio for the All-American Bowl, and asked him how, he was feeling about the Underwood recruitment, how things were on the LSU side, and nothing's really changed. It seems like the Tigers still have full confidence. Right now, I haven't had any real reason to get optimistic about this recruitment. Michigan has continued to work on Underwood. They've continued to keep in contact with him and his family, but I think right now all signs still point to LSU. Obviously, he made the visit to Alabama right before the dead period. So, the Crimson Tide are one to watch. You can never count out Nick Saban on the recruiting trail. Obviously, you can on the field after Michigan's Rose Bowl win, but I'm not sure the Rose Bowl win was enough to really move the needle here. I still think that NIL is playing a big role. I think the offensive system is playing a big role as well. And so I would still give LSU the advantage. So in terms of percent, it would be pretty low. I would say maybe like 10%, just because, he's an in-state kid. You can never rule out a guy like Underwood kind of shocking everybody and doing something different than expected. But as of today, it's looking pretty bleak for Michigan when it comes to Underwood. Let's go down to Go Blue 81 again. He says, how are we looking with Lincoln Cure and De'Aaron Hill? So these are two guys that aren't really asked about often. Lincoln Cure, top 100 tight end, actually gave Zach Libby a quote after the win over the Rose Bowl, and I think he was pretty, impressed with the way the Wolverines performed. When it comes to tight end, there are a lot of options in the 2025 recruiting class. I think Michigan's in a really good spot for Bear Tenney. I think they're in a really good spot for Eli Owens, Marshall Pritchett. I could see any of those three guys being in the class at the tight end position. But Cure is one of the, more elites in the class. And here's what he had to say after the Rose Bowl win. It was amazing. I don't know if they'd get it done late in the game, but they came through. Now they just have to finish the job. So obviously he's paying attention. Anytime you're a top tight end recruit, you're bound to have interest in Michigan, just the way they utilize and develop the position. So, it'll be interesting to see if he gets on campus for a game this fall. And, you see Luka Gilbert giving a reaction there as well. So Michigan's in on some of these top 100 kids, but I think Grant Newsome also likes some of the more under the radar guys, the ones I mentioned, Eli Owens, Bear Tenney, and Marshall Pritchett, all 3 stars, but, all could end up in the class. As far as De'Aaron Hill, he's definitely an interesting name. He hasn't visited campus. I know he's highly touted as a running back on other sites. He's an interesting athlete that could play multiple positions. He's a top 100 prospect just in general. Missouri is considered the favorite there. He is from Illinois, but he's closer to St. Louis than he is to, Chicagoland. With him, I think Michigan just has to get him on campus. If you are looking to play running back, and like I said, Hill can play multiple positions, but some project him as more of a back. There aren't a lot of places that you should look outside of Michigan if you want production and you want development and you want to play for one of the greats in Mike Hart. So, with Hill, again, I think it's about getting him on campus. He just hasn't visited yet, but I know there is some interest there. Go Blue 81 had one last question. And he said, did beating Bama move the needle for David Sanders? I know he might stay down south, and anyone that the win did move the needle for. Yeah, with David Sanders, 5-star, number 2 overall prospect in the country. I think he has an argument as the top overall prospect in the country. I mean, he's just extremely impressive. I had a chance to see him twice this year. He definitely, lives up to expectations. He's extremely physical. He has a tall, lean frame with the ability to add a ton of weight. He was just named the Gatorade State Player of the Year for North Carolina earlier today. I mean, just check so many boxes. But I think with Sanders, it's not really about what Michigan does on the field. I think the Rose Bowl win definitely impressed him and most other recruits around the country. But I feel like Sanders just wants to stay south, and that's why you see Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, and South Carolina as the leaders there. I think he would be a good fit for the Michigan program. I mean, he's such a nice, well-spoken kid, obviously a teammate of Jaden Davis and Shannon Goodwin, but I think it's going to be really, really tough to pull him out of Providence Day, despite the connections. I just think his preference is to go south. And so I would say there isn't anything else Michigan can necessarily do in that recruitment. I mean, the wins are there. The offensive line production is there. The, connections are there with Goodwin and Davis. Ex-Wolverine Jonathan Goodwin, Channing's dad, is his offensive line coach. So there isn't anything else Michigan can really do there. And Michigan was actually the first school to offer him. It's more of, does he actually want to leave the South? And right now I would probably say no. In terms of recruits that, the win really moved the needle for, I thought, all the offensive line recruits, aside from maybe Sanders, I think were really, really impressed by this win. I think it gave them an extra push. And I'm talking about guys that were already kind of leaning towards Michigan or have Michigan in that top 2, top 3 range, like a Rowan Byrne, Michael Carroll, Caden Strayhorn. I think all of those guys were really impressed. And me and Libby talked about it on yesterday's show, but the guys in Ohio, Marquise Davis, Trey McNutt, those elite guys, Bo Jackson, I thought it really moved the needle with them. So, remember, guys, get your questions in. We are going in order. If you want to skip the line, make sure to leave a super chat. That money goes directly to my travel budget so I can travel around the country. Like I mentioned, if you guys are just joining, I am in San Antonio for the All-American Bowl at the historic Crockett Hotel in downtown San Antonio, seeing Andrew Sprague and Josiah Edmond as well as Gatlin Bear. And I just noticed, Zach will like this. They have a weird card here. It says unwanted pizza solicitors to avoid them because it's a scam. What is going on in San Antonio? All right, let's get back to the questions. And Tyson Smith says, how did Sprague look at the All-American game? So the game's actually Saturday, but I think the more telling thing is practices, right? I think you get to see a lot more of these guys and taking quality reps, putting in effort into their reps as opposed to the game where it's more of just a little bit of a show. But I thought Sprague looked really good today, man. I mean, I got to focus in on him a little bit in the one-on-ones and the team session practice. You're going to see a clip right there. And you just see the size right away. I mean, he's 6'8". And the thing I like about Sprague is, he has really good feet and balance and uses his size to his advantage. And a lot of, taller tackles, believe it or not, struggle with utilizing their length. They kind of play short-armed. But Sprague has really good extension already. He's really polished. And I think with him, it's, I was actually surprised with not how thin he was, but he was thinner than I expected. When you see him up close, I know he looks massive in these clips, but when you see him, up close, he actually has a thinner upper half than I was anticipating. So there's room for him to add even more weight and get even bigger, which I think is really, really exciting. And I normally you think, oh, thin frame, it's a negative. No, I see it as a positive. Like, okay, there's even more to work with here, because he already has that brute strength. I think it's great that Herbert can add even more strength in the strength and conditioning program and add even more weight to his frame. I originally projected him as a left tackle, but he's actually playing or he's running with the first team on the West squad as a right tackle. I could see him there as well, but I thought he had a really, really good day. And I had more on Sprague over at thewolverine.com. So for more coverage from San Antonio, make sure to subscribe to thewolverine.com. I believe I am the only Michigan reporter here, so you can get all your information from me. Let's go down to Tyson Smith, and he says, do we get Gatlin Bear? And being in San Antonio obviously gave me a chance to meet with Gatlin Bear today. First of all, really great kid. I think he'd be a tremendous culture fit for Michigan. And you see, these clips today, I think, they were still getting acclimated to everything. But right away, you see the speed, you see the athleticism, you see the catch radius and the length was something that really caught my attention. It's not super, super apparent just off of film, but I thought he was longer than I expected. And he's really, well filled out. I mean, this is a kid that's 195 pounds and he looks a legit 195. He's listed at 6'1.5", which I think is accurate. He was right at about my height. So, I think Bear brings so much to the table in terms of being an explosive weapon on the outside that Michigan doesn't really have right now. And honestly, it's hard to find anybody with 10-2 speed. I mean, this is Olympic level speed here. So he could be a complete difference maker for Michigan's offense. He could be what Xavier Worthy was supposed to be for Michigan. Now, the problem with Bear is he's taking 2 years off, basically going on his mission. So, that sucks because I feel like he could have came into Michigan and been an immediate impact player. If Michigan ends up landing him, they have to wait until 2026 for him to get on campus. In terms of will Michigan land him, I do like Michigan's chances here. I think the On3 recruiting prediction machine is fairly accurate. I would give Oregon a little bit more of a shot than 12%. But, I think the biggest thing with Bear is he wants to see how things shake out with Jim Harbaugh. And that's why he hasn't made a decision yet. And he told me as much. He said he would have confidence in Sharon Moore if that hypothetical happened, if Harbaugh left and Moore became the head coach. But he's just kind of, playing it by ear and seeing what happens. He actually told me Harbaugh was honest with him and said that he still has aspirations to win a Super Bowl. So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I think the biggest thing holding Michigan back here isn't NIL at all. I think it's really the Harbaugh situation. Tyson Smith back with another one. He says, are you picking Michigan to win the Natty? Yes, I am picking Michigan to win the Natty. I mean, they beat Bama. I think they can beat Washington. Tyson Smith also says, if you had to play a pickup game of touch football with Clayton, Libby, Ballas, and Broom, what positions would they play? I'm assuming we have some other people on our team, so it's like a 7-on-7. So I would go with, Ballas is pretty short, man. He's like 5'8.5", maybe. But he kind of has like he's kind of like that in shape guy, even at like 50 years old. So I mean, he would be a good running back, I feel like. Broom kind of has a weird build. He has those glasses, makes him look smart. I feel like underneath all that, he can be a good quarterback. Looks like he makes good decisions. He can move us down the field. Clayton is a big guy, so definitely, would be snapping the ball. I mean, you only have one lineman in like touch football, right? Or maybe a couple, I don't know. But he would definitely be along the offensive line. And then Libby's kind of a short, stocky guy too, but he doesn't really look like a running back. I feel like he's more of a defensive guy. Throw him in at linebacker. Libby not if you like linebacker. He's in the background. He says he does like linebacker. All right, cool. And then I feel like I would be a receiver, get the ball in my hands. I'm already the flashy guy on staff. So, I think receiver is a prime position for me. So hopefully Broom feeds me that rock. John H. Schultz says, EJ, which recruits that you've talked to were most impacted by the Rose Bowl win, as in who is now looking at Michigan more seriously? Appreciate all the hard work this year, and Zach too. I think you can divide it into two categories. One is guys that were already interested in Michigan, and this gave them more of a push to maybe look at committing. So guys I mentioned earlier in the show, like the tight ends like Eli Owens, Marshall Pritchett, Bear Tenney, or the offensive lineman Roan Byrne, Michael Carroll, Caden Strayhorn, etc. Avery Gash, the Ohio guys as well. I think this is the time to capitalize on the elite Ohio guys. 3 wins in a row over Ohio State, and now you won the Rose Bowl and you're going into the Natty. I think you can, potentially pull a guy like Marquise Davis, who, is one of my favorite guys, the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Ohio, beating out Jordan Marshall. I love Marquise Davis. And you see his quote there on the screen. By the way, we had more than 100 recruits react to Michigan's win over Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Iverson Howard as well as another one. Marcus Wimberly, Jamari Deloach, Jalen Williams, all these guys are really, really high on Michigan. And I think this gives them that extra push. But I think a lot of them share similar concerns as Gatlin Bear, in the sense that they want to see how things play out with the sign stealing scandal, as well as will Jim Harbaugh stay. And then I think the other category is guys that weren't very interested at all that now might be more interested, like Naeem Offord is a 5-star cornerback out of Alabama, and he sent us a response back. You see Nashawn Montgomery on the screen, a top 100 receiver out of Florida, was a guy that, responded for the first time. I think some of these responses that we got were brand new from guys that were really highly rated, more top 100 type of guys. So we're talking about Naeem Offord, a 5-star guy. We're talking about Nashawn Montgomery, I believe is a top 50 player. I think players in the South were, really moved by the win, and maybe they give Michigan a look now, as opposed to just being like, all right, I'm going to stay in the South and go to an SEC program. Let's see. Borge Warner, he says, which linebacker recruits are the most impressed with how guys played? It's really tough with the linebacker recruiting is super frustrating right now, because 25 is loaded with highly touted linebackers, and there's no linebackers coach. So it's hard to really give positive reports on linebacker recruits, because there is no linebackers coach. So they're not, they're kind of in a state of limbo right now. I think one guy that's consistently been impressed with the linebacker play is Kamar Archie. on 300 linebacker out of the Hun School in New Jersey, same school as Michigan defensive line signee Owen Wafel. And, Kamar gave a pretty big quote there, as you see, compared to others. I think he was really impressed with the win. He had a couple other top 100 linebackers, react there as well. Elijah Barnes out of Dallas, who's planning to visit soon. Noah McHale out of California, who already visited once. So, yeah, I mean, there are some big time linebackers that have been impressed. It's just, it's hard for Michigan and linebacker recruiting right now because of the lack of a coach there, obviously. Let's go ahead and go down to Borge Warner. He says, who would be a better hopscotch teammate, Libby or Ballas? Definitely Ballas. He has like a better center of gravity, I feel like. And he's also old, so he understands these old time games like hopscotch and Red Rover and checkers. Like I feel like Ballas, he dominates these 1950s games. So, and I'm 6'1" and he's 5'8", so it'd be like a good combo, I feel like. I don't know what Zach was trying to pull up there on the screen. Let's go down to John A. Schultz, and he says, I heard there's a video of the Arkansas DB, Marcus Wimberly, running around with his shirt off and celebrating with his dad when Michigan won. Could he commit soon? Yeah, I mean, both Zach and I have had our predictions in. Zach was the first one to put in a prediction, and there's the video right there, Marcus Wimberly reacting to Michigan's win over Alabama and that final defensive stop. And, he gave a great quote to us afterwards. So you see, they even have like the maize pom-poms ready to go. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that he would be committed if there were no concerns about Harbaugh. So yeah, I mean, whether he commits soon or not, I mean, we'll see. I think a definitive answer on Harbaugh will probably have more of an impact on the recruiting trail than, Michigan's Rose Bowl win, but you see 99.5% chance of landing Wimberly, who recently visited for the game and decommitted from Arkansas. Borge Warner back with another one. He says, are there any under the radar offensive line guys that are interested after that performance? I mean, guys that we don't talk about a whole lot. One guy that pops into my head or into my mind is Lamont Rogers, top 100 offensive tackle out of Texas. He's one of the elite offensive linemen in the country, and we don't talk about him very much because he hasn't visited yet, and LSU has a heavy lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. But I visited him last time I was back home in Dallas, and, he seemed to have legitimate interest. He spoke highly of Sharon Moore. He always messages me back after Michigan's big wins. So I would say Lamont Rogers, low-key has some legitimate interest. And, he's a true towering tackle at 6'7", 305 pounds. Let's see. Borge Warner again. He says, are there any high-level guys leaning Ohio State or Penn State that we can flip to want us the way we are playing? I mean, the guys in 25, the guys in 24 have obviously signed. So, in 25, there aren't a lot of guys that already, committed or made their decisions early. I think one guy that is a heavy Ohio State lean, and he might have committed already, I need to double check, is Devin Sanchez out of Houston. He's a 5-star corner, and he hasn't committed to Ohio State yet, but that's the expectation. The Buckeyes have like a 97% chance of landing him. He listed Michigan in his top schools and then never really showed that much interest after that. But I mean, with the way the defense is playing, with Will Johnson being, one of the best corners in the country, I think, maybe that's a guy that, is in the state of Texas and is willing to leave and play in Big Ten country. Why go to Ohio State when you can go to Michigan and get developed and be the next Will Johnson? Let's go down to, let's see. Borge Warner says, have you ever eaten at Hot and Now? I don't even know what Hot and Now is. I think that would maybe be a Zach question. Borge Warner says, Carter Smith looks like the guy Tennessee has with Nico, very fast. Carter Smith was actually named the Gatorade Florida Player of the Year this morning. So I thought he, had a great junior season. I think he had a bit of a rough game when I saw him live, but I think he has some upside as a passer. He has a really strong arm. I mean, he throws in the 90s on the baseball diamond. He's true dual threat quarterback, which is something Jaden Davis doesn't really bring to the table. I think Davis is more of a polished passer, more of an accurate passer right now. But I think Carter Smith has a bigger arm and definitely can tote the rock, man. He was really impressive as a runner, just running quarterback powers and things of that nature. I think Carter Smith can, really bring something different to the quarterback position at Michigan. Borge Warner said, oh no, not, we already answered Borge Warner. Dutchman says, how come NIL matters so much to Underwood when he will get major NIL deals no matter where he goes? I think for, a good amount of 5 stars or just, highly touted players in general, they look at NIL as, guarantee. These schools are offering a guarantee and they don't have to sit and wait to get that NIL in the future. What if Underwood, and it's not even just Underwood. So let's just say any 5-star. What if any 5-star doesn't pan out and they never, really develop and they go out there and they stink on the field and, they end up getting nothing out of it? Or what if they get injured like right away or something of that nature? So I think guys just want to lock up guarantees. It's kind of like asking I would just ask you this question. If I can go to school A and they say I can make $5 million based on my play because I'm a 5-star, and I go to school B and they say I can make $5 million on my play because I'm a 5-star, and they'll give me a signing bonus of another $1 million, why wouldn't I just go with school B? Let's go to, we have a huge super chat here from Raka23, 1999. Big shout out to you, Raka. And he says, why are recruits not more honest about what they are looking for when it comes to picking a school? If you listen to these guys talk about being developed, academics, and history of winning, Michigan has all of these. I think guys are, they're media trained. I mean, they've grown up in the social media era. I feel like guys were a lot more honest back in the day. Like I've been covering recruiting since I was 19 years old. And I mean, back in like 2012, 2013, I feel like people would say anything. Like I remember Kyler Murray's interviews were hilarious. He was just so honest. I think a lot of people were willing to be more honest back then. And as social media has exploded and everything's under a microscope on the recruiting trail, I think these guys just give, really, coach speak type of answers. I think they are honest behind the scenes in what they're looking for when it comes to NIL. And I think Michigan is very upfront about what they don't do with NIL and what they can do with, guys on the team, but that's usually not enough to really move the needle with the top 50 level recruits. But, at the same time, there are guys that really do value the academics and the development and the history of winning. And you have a lot of those guys in this class. I mean, Jordan Marshall is obviously a top 100 recruit. Andrew Sprague's a top 100 recruit. Brady Prescorn's a top 150 recruit. You have a lot of on 300 guys, Cole Sullivan, Devin Baxter. So, yeah, I mean, Michigan's found those guys. I think the ones that, are really getting those massive NIL deals are the top 50 types, the top 75 types, the elite of the elite. And it's not necessarily that they don't value the development and things of that nature, but it's like, these kids are 18 years old and they're getting offered, thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's really tough for them to pass up. So I mean, that's kind of my view on it. We have no seconds left. We've hit the 30-minute mark. So appreciate you guys for joining me. Let's go rapid fire. Let's see if we had any last minute questions. Bloom Up Today says, how many top prospects commit to Michigan to drive up their NIL package? Michigan didn't really have that many decommits. I think Michigan might be included in those top schools or might get official visits. And I think a lot of these schools like Miami and Texas A&M and, Oregon aren't really afraid to compete with Michigan. I don't think they see Michigan as an NIL threat. And that's why you've seen Miami, flip a couple Michigan commits the last few cycles. Collins Anchampong, who just entered the transfer portal, and then Elias Rudolph this cycle. So I don't think, hey, I'm committed to Michigan is really going to drive up the bargaining price, because these schools that are playing the NIL game don't really fear Michigan right now when it comes to NIL. Let's go ahead and go down to Luedecke. Why do you think are the reasons Michigan is striking out the second time around with these players recently hitting the portal? Michigan thought they were a program fit. Our team guys cover the portal, so I don't handle too much of that. But I would say that, there's probably more NIL going on with the portal this cycle. And that's something I tried to explain in my column earlier this week, is that NIL was still kind of experimental during the 2022 cycle. Good Lord, can these people stop texting? During the 2022 cycle. And I think it really came into full swing in 23. And that's when Michigan finished outside of the top 15 in the recruiting rankings. And then this cycle, it was really, prevalent. And that's why Michigan finished outside of the top 15 again. So I think it's also making its way into transfer portals. You're seeing a lot of guys in the portal get massive NIL deals. So, all the way around, I mean, money just talks, man. So it's tough for a place like Michigan that doesn't have something that's guaranteed. Last question comes from Mark Majkowski, and he says, any new ads possible, flips? Yeah, I mean, the lone focus right now with 2024 is Gatlin Bear, and I'll have a really in-depth interview with him over on the Wolverine.com right after this show ends. I was actually in the process of writing it before we started it up. He had some really interesting things to say, including his conversation with Jim Harbaugh, who was honest with him about still wanting to win a Super Bowl. He talked about, the expectations he has for the national championship game. He touched on Sharon Moore, who he said has been even more involved in his recruitment down the stretch, which makes sense. If Harbaugh leaves, there's a chance Sharon Moore could be the guy, right? So, we talked about that. We talked about scheme fit and things of that nature. So I'll have that interview with Gatlin Bear over at the Wolverine.com, just in a few minutes. So make sure to head over there and subscribe to the Wolverine.com today. It's a perfect time to subscribe, with me in San Antonio giving you recruiting coverage. We had more than 100 recruits react to the Rose Bowl win, and our team guys will be in Houston for the Natty. So great time to subscribe to the Wolverine.com. Also like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. We'll see you guys next week.